might be your hardest video to edit because we're probably going to have a lot of really good information that doesn't all line up.
Mm-hmm. So the wisest man who ever lived said, "Don't be overly righteous, neither make yourself overly wise."
Coming from the... Ooh, that's a good one.
Why should you destroy yourself? Don't be too wicked, neither be too foolish. That's quite a concept. Don't be too righteous.
This might be an odd video because maybe it is just a conversation like this. Because
maybe it won't make it on the...
That's a really good cigar. I say that every time we light these. They're so cheap.
Okay, smoke on the right end. Cigar smoking 101.
It is hard draw.
Draw from the same end every time. So, Gentleman Outlaw.
Why are we named Gentleman Outlaw? And why do we smoke and drink and talk biblical topics? That bothers people.
Some.
But other people's appreciate it. I think the main reason we do it is we enjoy it. I enjoy sitting down having a cigar. I enjoy sitting down having a drink. Mm-hmm. Especially when you've had a rough day. Yeah. It's just kind of nice when you've had a celebratory day. Like, just everything went really good. It's nice to just sit down and... A cigar forces you, and a pipe more so, forces you to slow down and to think. You can't... It's not like a cigarette where you're trying to get something out of it.
Right, you can't hurry it.
You can't rush it.
Mm-hmm.
If you take a cigar and you puff it a little too fast or too often, it burns. Not you, but it burns the tobacco. You lose the flavor, and it
ruins it.
It's kind of ashy and nasty.
Yep. Same is true of a pipe.
Same is true with a pipe.
And actually, with a pipe, if you burn it too fast, you smoke it too fast, you will burn your tongue and so on. You get the tobacco hot, and you'll get what's called tongue bite. Mm-hmm. You'll also ruin the pipe.
You also ruin the pipe,
and that's not a cool thing to do.
But if you do it too slow, it goes out and it's just kind of a pain.
Mm-hmm. You have to keep relighting.
There's an art. There's a je ne sais quoi to it. You know, I don't know what that means.
It's a cool word.
Je ne sais quoi literally means I don't know what that means. It's got a thing to it that just it forces you to slow down, and in a world where everything is right now,
fast world.
It's nice to slow down,
mm-hmm.
and. The nicotine helps your neural pathways fire a little bit faster in a way that helps your mind open up. And I know sometimes like we come up here and it's just kind of like, oh, I'm tired and I can't think straight. I can't get my thoughts together. And somewhere between starting the video and kind of just things start to flow.
Yeah.
Words start to come.
Now you said the word nicotine. That's a dirty word.
It's God-given.
It's a dirty word.
Mm-hmm.
What's the first thing you think of when somebody says, I enjoy nicotine, or if I'm smoking something with nicotine? You're thinking of all the health issues that come with cigarettes. That's killing millions, thousands. I don't know what the numbers
Cigarettes are horrible.
They're killing a lot of people.
And cigarettes are horrible because of the chemicals that they added. So back in the... I don't know if you even have to go back as far as the 50s, but the 40s, 50s, things like that, cigarettes were prescribed by doctors as an antidepressant.
Cigarettes were cigarettes. They were small
Yeah.
cigars.
Yep, small cigars. And they weren't bad for you. People weren't dying from cancers and
Right.
stuff back then. They also weren't addictive.
Right.
So the cigarette companies came together and added chemicals that are harmful to the body to make them more addictive. That's a whole different video. We're not talking about that. We're talking about why do we do it.
But back to that, just to top it off. And I've never smoked cigarettes. I've enjoyed pipe smoking. I'm doing a cigar right now, and I like a cigar too a lot. But pipe smoking is a hobby all by itself. There's a whole thing around it, getting the right kind of pipe, the right kind of tobacco.
Hobby.
There's a lot of work involved. Then you light and relight. But I've never smoked a cigarette. But I know people who smoke cigarettes. That comes into your lungs.
Correct.
I don't. It seems to me I just have a coughing fit and wouldn't be able to breathe. I don't.
Yeah.
I don't understand that because I don't smoke cigarettes. So,
At best, with these, you're getting secondhand.
yeah, you're getting. Sometimes I'll take it around and cough on it and think, oh, that's stupid.
Yeah.
But it's not to the point where you're dying of cancer because you're constantly filling your lungs with that chemical filled smoke.
And this requires a discipline, especially the pipe, because the pipe stuff, you got to pull the tobacco out, like 6 hours earlier and let it dry and let it come to room temperature and room atmospheric crap and pack it in your pipe, and then you got to pack it like a child, like a woman, like a man, and get that packed just perfect so it's not too hard to draw. And it's
Whole art.
There's an entire art form to it, and then whether you're smoking out of a corncob pipe or a burl wood, or if you're smoking out of a meerschaum or clay pipe, you have to smoke it differently.
Yeah.
And so there's a discipline to it, a way of learning how to master something.
Yeah, but it's one of those things, dude. It's so rare to get that perfect smoke, but you're always reaching for that. And when you do get that perfect smoke, it is such a joy because you got through that whole pipe and it was tasted so good, and so it's the art of trying to achieve something that's kind of elusive.
Yeah.
But anyway, back to, you're not with either of these or the pipe. You're not inhaling smoke intentionally, other than, like you said, we'll smoke secondhand. And even the smoke that you are inhaling secondhand is not full of chemicals.
Yeah.
So to say this is killing you or it's causing health issues is just simply not true.
Yep. And what's really, if you come back to the idea of, well, I like to have a drink after a rough day because I'm stressed out, or it's been a bit of a depressing day, so I want to have a cigar. And people in the church community will be like, well, that's wrong, because you shouldn't be putting, that kind of thing. You should be putting it at the base of the cross and letting God take it. Well, those same people are okay with medical antidepressants.
Yeah.
So you're kind of talking out of both sides of your mouth there. I don't do this as a replacement for God's grace and His joy, and I don't do that. And if that's your argument, that's not even biblical. Do you remember the passage, Proverbs about
31.
Proverbs 31? Can you paraphrase that?
Well, basically, that wine is for those who are depressed and struggling. I don't remember the wording. I can look it up if you'd like.
Yeah. Well, we don't have to look it up right now, but
Get to the video.
go to Proverbs 31 and read it for yourself. It's there. If a man is drowning in or allow him to drink away his sorrows, basically, for the day.
It does say, it's not for kings. Strong drink, I think is the terminology, is not for kings. In other words, if you're making laws and you're making decrees and making decisions, that might not be the time to be drinking.
Yeah, you need to be sober for those things.
Yep.
So this isn't we're saying it's okay to drink in excess. Neither one of us, we have to climb down a ladder to get out of this building. So if we drink too much...
Yeah, we're in the lofts of our barn here.
We're not going to go too far. But it's not really an act of rebellion. It's kind of... Unfortunately, because people in our churches don't read their Bibles, it is a rebellious act, but that's not why we do it.
Mm-hmm. No, I was smoking cigars and pipes and drinking whiskey long before I was ever challenged by the church, you might say.
Correct.
It does feel a little rebellious, but which is kind of interesting that they could make you feel that way.
Yeah, it's
But that's not the case.
well, and that's a problem a lot of people have with churches is they feel judgmental in
Yeah, yeah,
different video.
yeah.
But yeah, so how can we say it's not rebellious? Our name is Gentleman Outlaw.
So you're basically naming your company or your brand after rebellion.
Yeah, kind of. No.
Is there a time for rebellion?
Yeah, that's where the Gentleman Outlaw thing came from. It happened during the COVID outbreak. Things were getting scary, and they were implementing all sorts of lockdowns and all sort of extraneous measures to try to, for the betterment of mankind, which is always when the worst things happen.
They say.
They say. They claim it's for the betterment of mankind, but I remember we're originally from northern Michigan, and we had friends up there saying that they could go to Home Depot and buy 2x4s, but the gardening section was shut down, so they couldn't get seeds to plant their crops that summer. Now, where we come from, that's a way of life.
Yeah.
You if you don't have crops and you don't have your cattle, you don't eat. So you either had to decide to break the law and plant your crops. You weren't allowed to go outside to plant your crops in the middle of farm country. You had to stay indoors. You either had to break the law or risk your family not eating. That's a big deal. Now, if any of you are in the city, you're like, oh, that's kind of extreme because you can just go to the grocery store. First off, grocery stores were dangerous places to be in the very beginning of the pandemic because people were clearing shelves and willing to kill over things. Also, they were low on materials, and it was a struggle for us.
People were killing each other for toilet paper.
Yeah, it was a struggle for us because it's like we want to do what we're told because we're not rebellious people. But if it comes to breaking the law or saving my family, I'm gonna choose my family. If it comes to following the laws of this nation or following the laws of the Bible, follow the laws of the Bible. Follow man's law until it contradicts God's law. It's how I've always been told, and that's what I was planning to do. It's gentlemen first. We want to help our community. We want to follow the rules that are supposed to. When they came out with the mask mandates, I started with that. I went and got myself some cloth masks. I got some medical masks if I could. We did what we could do to help protect those around us.
Mm-hmm.
We started with gentlemen.
Yep.
And then we realized if it gets much worse, we might have to do some things outside the scope of the law. That doesn't mean going out and looting stores because you want a new television set. That means doing what is required to protect and supply for your family.
Yep.
That's what Gentleman Outlaw is about.
And your neighbors.
And your neighbors. That's why we have a little farm now. Is because we were both in apartments. We're like, you know what? If things go bad, we can't help anybody. We barely have enough to feed ourselves for a week. How are we going to help those around us? And so all these things were going around in our head. And I remember I read a book by John Eldridge called Beautiful Outlaw. And that's about the personality and the character of Jesus Christ.
Mm-hmm.
And he was an outlaw. He was killed for treason. Don't got to go too far into that one, but
Yeah, more or less, that's right.
he was an outlaw.
Yep. Yep. And I think if you look at the founders of this nation, they were perfect gentlemen. I don't know if you could, if you were to create a poster child for what a gentleman is, some of those founding fathers would be on the front page.
Yeah.
And yet, not only were they outlaws, they were traitors
Yeah.
to the king.
Yep. They were traitors to the government that they were a part of when they wanted. They didn't just want to start a nation. They wanted to create something that God would be happy with. A more perfect nation is how they phrased it.
A more perfect union is the words they actually used on paper.
Yeah. So that they weren't just being rebellious for the sake of rebellion. I think that's foolish. I think that's childish. I think that's wrong. But sticking to your principles and sticking to your beliefs, even when you're legally persuaded against doing so, That's what separates the men from the boys. That's what separates the wheat from the chaff. Is, are you willing to stand up against outlandish laws and outlandish rules, dictates? They weren't even laws. They didn't even make laws. They came down with rules from different organizations that were not elected. They were not put in place by the people, for the people, to represent the people. They were put into place by, they're just unelected bureaucrats, is all they were, making laws that they had no right to make. We believe there's a lot of people out there that were willing to stand against that. And a lot of people did. A lot of people went to jail. A lot of people went to jail. There was pastors, especially in Canada, that just to stand up in front of their congregation and preach a sermon ended up in prison. That is a gentleman outlaw. They were standing up for their God-given freedoms, and they were standing up for their beliefs regardless of the freedom. That's what a gentleman outlaw is. And so we smoke cigars and drink brandy while doing this because it's enjoyable.
It's a representation of who we are.
Yeah.
What we do.
This is us. We're real people. And that's why we did this whole thing, is we wanted to be real with you.
Yeah.
That's why we try to remember to sign off all of our videos with "You're not alone." There's a lot of people who feel alienated, and they feel by themselves because all they want to do is live their life as who they are.
So I don't have a problem passionately following Jesus. Striving daily to live my life in a way that's pleasing to God in every way possible. Our church group would call that holiness, and I don't know but that's a different subject. But anyway, is working towards at least living a righteous life before God in every way possible. And that includes my own personal enjoyment with my family, with my friends, and having time alone to enjoy a good pipe or cigar and a good brandy. And I don't see that as a contrast.
Yeah, C.S. Lewis had a quote. That's where I need this quote pulled up. I'm going to go ahead and read this quote so I don't get it wrong. But the sun looks down on nothing half so good as a household laughing together over a meal, or two friends talking over a pint of beer, or a man alone reading a book that interests him.
Yep. And that's C.S. Lewis.
That's C.S. Lewis in the book The Weight of Glory. And I just love that, because God loved to see us enjoy what we enjoy.
Yep.
As long as it doesn't conflict with His law.
Right.
Now, if you enjoy things, which I find it hard to believe that anybody enjoys things that are contrary to God outside of the purview of they enjoy rebellion.
Yeah.
Because God's law is written on your heart, and when you're doing something in contrast to Him, and you know it's in contrast to Him, it's not the act that you're enjoying, it's the rebellion.
It's the rebellion itself.
And I think if anybody was to look deeply and selflessly at themselves, they would realize that.
Yeah.
That happens a lot. But when God's given you things, He's given us, all herbs bearing seeds and all the animals of the land, and He has given us this land to have dominion over it, and He's given it to us for our enjoyment, to be done in a godly way. He enjoys when His children enjoy the things that He gave them.
The Hebrew prayer that Jesus would have said these words thousands of times. Every time He sat down to a meal, He would say, "Bless you, the Creator of the universe, for giving us the fruit of the vine." And they would take a drink of the wine. Now the wine is fruit of the vine. Or they would say, for bringing this food from the ground, which is the grain, which is the meat, whatever, is food that the earth has provided. We are always blessing God, thanking God for what He has given us, whether it's the leaf from the ground in this case, or the fruit of the ground in this case. In other words, thank you, God, for the enjoyment that you've provided to me. Not just sustenance, not just manna. There was a time he gave them just manna.
Yeah.
And then there's times that he blesses us with the fruit of the earth.
It's in abundance. So is it okay for somebody to be overly self-righteous about things? Like, well, I think it's better to not do that. To be too holy. Is that possible? To be too...
It would be individual. God, you said it really well. God places his law on our hearts. But the wisest man that ever lived said these words. Don't be overly righteous, neither make yourself overly wise. Now this is Solomon speaking, and he's not saying don't be righteous. He's not saying don't follow the law of God. He never would say that.
Yeah.
But is there a way that you can be so pious and so self-righteous, if I should probably use that word, that you're no longer even enjoying the life that God has given you?
Yep. Now, there is a situation where if God lays on your heart that for you individually this is wrong,
Oh, absolutely.
avoid it. Clear and simple. We would respect that greatly. Same thing with alcohol. If you have a problem with alcohol, you need to figure out that problem before you try to partake.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't have that conviction on your heart, may we bless God for the things he's given us.
That's right. That's right.
And if you want to do it out of an act of rebellion because you've always been taught that this is evil and this is wrong, and now you're just now for the first time realizing that it's not time yet.
Yeah.
If you're doing it out of an act of rebellion because these crackpots on YouTube made some good points, you need to search your heart.
Yeah.
You need to spend a lot of time in prayer and ask God if this is okay for you.
Mm-hmm.
I've never had that conviction, so I've never had to have that time. But that's why we do what we do. That's why we are who we are, is because we are who we are.
Yeah. This is the real deal.
If either of us ever had a conviction in our heart to stop, the other one would probably stop as well, especially around the other. But we just want to be authentic. We want to be ourselves. I have no desire to please the eyes and ears of men for the sake of the eyes and ears of men. That's not what I'm here to do.
But also not to intentionally offend.
No.
We you come to our house and you're opposed to this, we're not going to put it in your face.
No, not at all.
Not intentionally.
No, if you came to do a video with us and you were uncomfortable with this, we would refrain from it because we would probably challenge it a little bit.
Pour you a cup of tea or Coca-Cola and that's perfectly okay.
C.S. Lewis, also, one thing that he loved more than anything was a thick book and an endless cup of tea. So it wasn't that he was always drinking beer with his friends. He wasn't always smoking. There was times that he felt smoking a pipe was the greatest thing ever. To sit down and have a discussion with a pipe and a pint of beer was amazing. But if he went on a walk, he wouldn't even want to talk to anybody. He would walk with somebody, but he wanted to do it in silence, and he wouldn't smoke because it took away from that aspect of what God has given him. He gave him that nature to sit down at a table with friends and drink and laugh and talk and smoke. That's the moment that God gave for that, to walk in nature and to appreciate his world that he has provided. He held aside the conversations and things like that. That's how C.S. Lewis showed appreciation to God for those things. Now, if the only time you like to have a long conversation is while hiking through the woods,
then find somebody to do it with.
Then find somebody to do it with. That's good.
Nothing wrong with that.
That's a good way to show appreciation for God and to bless God, which is a concept we don't really think about much. We think about how God blesses us. We don't think about how we can bless God.
Yeah. That's an interesting concept. So a lot of people would argue that the alcohol is a social lubricant.
Yes.
It loosens your lips.
Yep. It's liquid courage.
And I would say yes.
Yeah.
So?
What are you hiding in society that you are afraid to have a little lubricant.
Now, if I'm drink so much that I'm totally lost control of myself, that's a whole nother discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of people that do alcoholic research into things will find out that it's not that alcohol turns you into somebody else, but it turns you into more of yourself.
That's interesting.
If you are an angry, belligerent person at heart, and you hold that back and you start drinking, that comes out.
Interesting.
If you're a happy, cheerful, loving person and you drink a lot of alcohol, everybody's getting hugs and kisses. It's just
interesting.
It's the way it is. It accentuates who you are, which might be something to consider sometime. If you don't really know who you are at your core because you've been locked down so hard, have a pint with some friends. And what comes out of you is probably who you are at your core. And if you don't like that, you might want to work on that.
Yeah, that's interesting.
That doesn't mean go out and drink every night until all of a sudden you're better, because that won't happen.
No.
But
alcohol doesn't cure anything.
No. But it does bring out who you are on the inside, for better or for worse. And if that's a problem, then you have issues to work with on your own with people. But it's not the alcohol. God never created anything in itself that was evil. Everything that he made, he said was good. Until he made man, and that was very good. The only things that are evil are that which God has given, and it has been twisted and perverted.
Yep. So you and I both know a pastor who has said to us, I don't agree with alcohol because I've seen how it destroys families.
Again, the reason that destroys the families is because when they start drinking, they become angry, which means that's who they are at their core.
They've already got a different problem. The problem's not the alcohol.
Now, that person may need to refrain from alcohol until they solve that inner problem. They need to really wander the desert for a while, go into seclusion, just them and God, and work on that. If they can't do it by themselves, they need to come to people who are godly people and just be open with them and say, hey, I've got a lot of pent-up anger. And there's ways to work through that. And unfortunately, we don't know how to help people. We know how to prescribe things.
Right. Yeah, we can give them drugs.
We don't know how to help them.
Go figure. Like you started that at the beginning. We're okay with giving them drugs.
Yeah.
To fix that problem.
Yeah. Not us.
No.
Society.
No.
Our churches.
We're okay with the concept of doctors prescribing drugs that will calm or silence those demons, if you will. But not okay with coming home and
having a
relaxing with a drink.
And that's a bit of a problem. I don't get the balance in that. Now, we also, and I found this even worse, we recently had a pastor that we were close with that said he enjoyed a cigar, but he wasn't allowed to because of his congregation.
Yeah.
Because of his tribe that he was a part of. And that was sad, because he would have been a fantastic guy to sit down and have a conversation like this.
We had good conversation, but never to just really relax.
I would argue that he is stealing from God the ability to bless God with the things that God has provided for him that bring him joy. And the worst part is he's doing it with the best intentions.
Yeah.
He thinks he's pleasing God by holding back the desires of the flesh. And maybe that's what he's doing, and if that's the case, that's right. But if he's holding back the desires that God has put inside of him to please those of flesh, that's a huge issue. God says, here, I gave you this. I know what kind of a man you are. You're a good man. You're an honest man. You're caring. And I want you to enjoy yourself with some friends. Not go over the top with it, but I made this for you. If you use it right and proper, you will bless me. And you say, nope. Because the head of this tribe over here says it's wrong for me to do. That's an issue.
Yep.
So refraining from something that society says is wrong could in itself be a sin. And partaking in things because all of society says it's right could also be a sin. Forget the masses, forget the groups. Brings me back to what I've been saying forever. You need to learn who God is. You need to learn the character of God. You need to learn to listen to Him.
And please Him only.
And learn to bless Him.
And sometimes pleasing Him means to
refrain,
to submit to other people and things like that. I get that. There is a time and a place for that. But if you're stealing from God, I think that's a good way to put it.
Yep.
The enjoyment that He's given you, it's just kind of backfired in your face.
He wants, correct me if I'm wrong here, more than anything, He wants for us to have joy in this world that He has created.
Joy is a tricky word, yes, and I fully agree with that. We tend to think, all I want for my children, you hear this all the time, is happiness. I want my kids to be happy. That's a nice thing to want for your kids. I mean, I want the same thing. I want my kids to be happy. I really do. God's concern for your life has a lot more than just daily, I'm having fun.
Well, I chose the word joy and purpose.
Joy comes from God.
Yes. Happiness is not joy.
Not the same thing.
When you're joyful, you're not always happy. And when you're happy, you're not always joyful. Because joy comes when knowing that you're in line with the desires of God. Whether you're literally raising a family in the middle of a field in pure bliss, because that's what God has in store for you, or whether you're being hung upside down on a cross.
Joy is still available.
Joy's still there. And that can't be taken away by anybody. Because if you're following what God desires for you, Jordan Peterson said something about happiness is such a low goal, and it will never suffice in all cases.
I would say happiness is a reaction to circumstances.
Correct.
Joy is an action of the heart.
Correct.
That is not related to circumstances.
Yeah. So, I would encourage you to search your heart. I'm not saying pick up smoking cigars. Pipes and cigars are an expensive hobby. So
not these.
No, these are fantastic. These are cheap and wonderful.
Yep, they are. If you ever want a recommendation, we'll let you know.
We're not saying you should do it. We're saying it's not sinful to do it in itself. Again, search your own heart for what God would desire for you. That's what we do before everything that we do.
How about coffee?
Well,
I'm darn near addicted to coffee.
We're Americans. Coffee is what made us America.
Is there a difference?
No.
I use coffee as a stimulant.
Every single morning.
Every morning. And you take it away from me, and we're going to have a fight in your hands.
Yep. You're absolutely right. I don't drink coffee for my happiness in my life. I drink coffee so you live.
And we laugh about coffee, and we all talk about how we're addicted to coffee, and we joke about it, and we are, as Americans, we're addicted to it.
You have coffee pots in the lobby of your church.
Yeah.
Because people can't make it through a sermon without
coffee. And there's
coffee.
nothing wrong with that.
No, there's not.
And yet,
it's still a stimulant.
This stimulant that God gave us of the fruit of the vine is frowned on by some.
Yep.
Not all.
Now, again, going to scientific studies and things like that, sugar.
Yes.
Sugar is 8 times more addictive than cocaine.
Yep.
But you will allow children to have candy in your Sunday schools.
Pass it around at Easter.
But we're not huffing cocaine in the front of the pews. It's less addictive. You want to talk about having an energetic Sunday morning, give everybody a little bit of Coke. Not suggesting that.
No.
I've never partaken in such things. For one, it's illegal. And
yeah.
I don't need that to sustain my family, so there's no reason to become an outlaw on that.
Right.
That comes back to the gentleman outlaw. It's gentlemen first.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm not required to break the law, I won't. So that's an important aspect as well. That's
We do submit to the authority of the government or
Correct.
any other authority above us.
yeah, because governments are instituted by God.
Yes.
So
Well said.
we have an obligation to follow those authorities. But on the same token, my first authority is to take care of what God has given me. He has given me a family, and it's my responsibility as a father to provide for that family. And if the institutions that God has put above me contradict the direct orders from God that I am given,
That's a deal breaker.
I have to choose one.
Yep.
And so will you. Whether it's this government, whether it's... And here's a concept. Everybody's like, well, your government's not doing... You're just kind of a conspiracy theorist. Every government system from the dawn of time until today has failed. This government system will fail regardless of what we do, whether it's, in 2024 or whether it's in 3034. It will fail. You need to learn this to pass it on to your children and ingrain how important it is for them to know when to decide between what God has said and what the government is saying. And if it doesn't fail in their days, they need to pass it down to their children. So therefore, when it fails, your children don't know any better. And they don't just immediately submit to the government because governments are instituted by God. So therefore, I need to follow the government. Even if the government tells me I'm not allowed to read my Bible.
Right.
Even if the government says I'm not allowed to congregate together and build up the kingdom of heaven. There is a line of which one day you will have to cross, or your children will.
Yep, that's right. Or you'll lay down.
Or you will lay down and you will fail, and you will stand before Christ, and he will say, I never knew you, depart from me. So there's a little bit of passion, a little bit of zeal in what we're doing. But we're very careful not to take it over the top for the sake of rebellion.
Right.
That's very important.
That's well said.
But you need to search your own heart for what God would have for you. And again, back to what I keep saying, you need to know who God is so you actually know his voice. So you know when you're following him.
Yeah, that's right.
And I really, really hope that drives home to some people, because it's so important and we miss that.
Yep. Within the churches, we miss that.
Especially within the churches.
Yeah. That's another video.
That's another video. But at this point, I believe you know who we are. If you don't like it, we are who we are.
Yeah.
You don't have to like us. Our opinions are not based on whether or not you like it or not.
If you don't agree, shoot us an email, shoot us a text.
Yeah, if we said something that's just blatantly wrong and you're saying you're not even listening to God, please, for the love of God,
Say so.
say so. Because if that's the case, we need to change our ways.
Yep.
But, yeah, I hope this resonated with some people and you realize that you're not alone. And that there are real people still out there.
Yeah.
But is there anything else you wanted to touch on?
That's it. Thanks for joining us.
Appreciate you guys. Make sure you like and subscribe, and remember that you're not alone.
Bye-bye.